Welcome to Thinking Like a Lawyer with your hosts Ellie Mistal and Joe Patrice, talking about legal news and pop culture, all while thinking like a lawyer. Here on Legal Talk Network.
Hello, welcome to another edition of Thinking Like a Lawyer. I'm Joe Patrice from Above the Law. I am joined by a pop socket enthusiast, Catherine Rubino.
Hey, how are you, Joe?
Good.
I mean, you don't use a pop socket on your phone, and I feel like you're missing a trick. Like there's like a clear benefit, but maybe my hands are just smaller than yours. Well, they are, but maybe that's part of it. But it's so convenient, and you can add different colors or designs or patterns. I personally prefer a Minnie Mouse pop socket.
Yeah, all right.
Listen, at a certain point in quarantine, these are the things that we care about to keep ourselves sane.
Fair enough.
You're so dismissive. It's hilarious.
Yeah. I have a case for my phone, so it's similar, but then I just bought the case for my phone, and then that became the case for my phone, and then I was done.
I have a lot of issues. With that statement. And I also have numerous cases because not every case that I like turns out to be as effective as I thought it was going to be, and so I have to have different options. I mean, also, you might want a different color palette for your phone, depending on, what you're doing, what you're wearing.
No.
Yeah,
no, I do not.
I mean, okay. Just because you think a certain way doesn't mean that you're right.
So anyway, this is the internet's most serious and professional legal podcast, as we've been told. You don't need to fact check that, but we have been told that. Although I didn't believe it when I heard it. But we're here to do a quick recap of the week in legal news as we've been seeing it. We've had some changes around the legal world. Most importantly, we've gotten through one cycle of bar exams. We're looking into September exams coming up, and we're already starting to see some states realize that, based on what happened in July, that's a dumb idea.
It's almost like somebody should have said that to them the entire time.
Yes. And we also are seeing...
I think that we keep on coming back to the subject of bar exams on this podcast, but it's for a bunch of really good reasons. First of all, the various bar examiners don't appear, by and large, from backing away from that requirement. There might be sort of like moving the chairs around on the Titanic sorts of changes that you are diligently covering. And, my hat's off to you for actually trying to keep every state's various requirements in line and up on to date on our website so that, folks actually know what's going on. And that was a compliment. So that's your allotment for probably a solid 10 days now.
Fair enough. Okay, good. I will duly note that.
Okay. So, but, there are a lot of things going on in the world of bar exams. It's an incredibly important test if you've gone to law school and would now like to actually practice and have some ability at some point in your life to pay back the, $100,000 plus worth of loans that you've likely taken out. So it's a big deal, and it is changing rapidly. And from my perspective, it seems like a lot of folks who are in charge just keep on putting their foot in their mouth, don't they?
Yes. So
that was a thing that, you got real annoyed this morning about some stuff that was going on.
Yeah, I think that's a fair way of putting it.
You don't usually have emotions, so even anger is an emotion.
Okay, fair enough.
See, I had a counterbalance complimenting you earlier, so it's a give and take.
Yeah, so the things you need to do in order to, be a licensed attorney is you need to take the bar exam.
You do. Pass it.
In
Not
theory,
just take it.
You need to take it. You then have to you also have to have taken the MPRE, the ethics test.
Correct.
And now there's a new requirement, which is you need to have not crossed the people who run the NCBE.
Well, that seems a little strange.
Yeah, that one seemed like it doesn't really belong.
It seemed like somebody tried to slip that past the goalie there. I don't really know what's going on.
Yes. So the new requirement is that the new requirement was unveiled during a virtual law conference that happened yesterday, as we're recording this, where the head of the NPRE outlined that she feels that she and her colleagues at the NCBE, sorry, I think I said NPRE. She feels that she and her colleagues at the NCBE are being treated unfairly, uncivilly, and unprofessionally. And she says that it borders on harassment. Note, she's not saying that it's harassment, but she's saying it's, borders on, which is
I was gonna say, listen, I'm a woman who writes on the internet for a living. I'm quite versed on online harassment, and it didn't seem like that was what was going on. I think that she actually had some example of what she called harassing or borderline harassing behavior, but my recollection was that it wasn't that. What was it?
She cited a Yale Law practitioner's tweet, which is a fun little parody account out there if people are looking for somebody to follow, that, just makes some jokes about the internet. And what this particular tweet said was that she was going to appear at this event and that people should definitely show up, register for it, and do their part to ask her tough questions on the back end of it, which seems entirely reasonable. This is what she identified as a tweet that was problematic.
So having people ask her questions about the NCBE's policy is problematic.
After looking at this tweet, she says this is what's representative, at least to her, of her online harassment, which it is A, not, and B, it's indicative of what was really going on. This is not a statement that she feels there's genuine harassment out there. It is a designed, targeted statement put there to chill speech on the part of people who would criticize what the NCB is doing. And among the things the NCB is doing, by all accounts, they are in opposition to a motion being proposed at the ABA to just call upon states to take into account public health concerns when it comes to in-person bar exams. They're opposed to that.
It's not like there's a pandemic going on.
Yeah. There's a level of targeted cruelty on their part, just a refusal to understand what's going on in the world, and they are just pushing forward, and they want anybody who's willing to suggest that they should be questioned about this to go away. Earlier in the week, another NCBE leader had written a document which it said that questioning the relevance of the exam is not the examinee's job. The examinee's job is to pass it. It's just a refusal to care about any of these criticisms. So this was a threat. It was a threat, as I put it. It's only not a threat if you're the sort of person who believes a mobster saying, "Nice store you got here, shame if something happened to it," is just encouraging your various business endeavors. That is not what's happening. In the reality-based world, this was a threat, and it was targeted at these critics. And it is unfortunate that it's come to this. And if there's anything that's unprofessional going on in this, it is not the applicants who are criticizing the exam. It is the fact that the leadership of this organization feels the need to make veiled threats of people's licenses.
To me, another point that I think always has to be mentioned, I think we might have said it in the past, but always needs to be mentioned when you're talking about the NCBE leadership, is that they're obviously pushing very hard for a bar exam despite the folks' public health concerns, and are staunchly against the move in various jurisdictions for diploma privilege. And yet they themselves are the benefit of diploma privilege, right?
Right. It is at this point, I think, so oft said that everyone knows this.
It needs to be said every time.
But yes,
it needs to be said every single time.
The people who are making this push are themselves folks who never took a bar exam and were granted their law licenses based purely on their diploma.
Has had diploma privilege for a real long time, and that's who these folks are.
Yeah.
It needs to be said because the stark hypocritical nature of what they're saying, it doesn't get old. It doesn't stop being astonishing, and particularly in the middle of the pandemic.
It's very bad. And so that is the kind of strong arm tactics that we had this week, which is not ideal. But, it's becoming par for the course. We're seeing some folks rethink the September exams. We're seeing some questions being asked about the efficacy of online exams after what happened in Michigan and the Indiana and Nevada situation. And, we'll see where this goes. Certainly looking at COVID statistics, it does not look like we're going in a direction that's going to make September look much better.
And I actually think that one of the better One of the better skills that a pandemic can teach you is flexibility and learning that, just because you've made a decision doesn't mean you need to stay with that decision in the light of new information. And I bring this up because that's something that we're seeing now in terms of law schools and classes. Georgetown University Law Center recently said that they originally in June had said that they were going to go in for classes. Everyone would have at least some in-person exams. But now they've kind of done an about face and said, no. We're definitely going to go online. And they're even giving a 5% tuition cut for those who've been financially hurt by the pandemic. So it's kind of a one-time thing. So don't expect it next year.
So you're thinking that they looked out and they just kind of understood where things were and they were worried about going forward with school?
Yes.
Yeah. You know what else you can be worried about? If you're worried about a contract deadline, Contract Tools by Paper Software is the most powerful, versatile, and full-featured Microsoft Word add-in for contracts. For less than $1 a day, Contract Tools can help you navigate complex legalese, fix common contract drafting problems, and much more. See for yourself with a 7-day free trial. Go to papersoftware.com/trial and get started today.
So yeah, that's been what's going on, I guess, in the way that COVID has been messing everything up.
It's interesting that they're cutting tuition. Now we've had conversation on I think
it was a COVID cast.
I don't think this podcast, but a different podcast where we explored whether or not law schools should be giving tuition cuts. And we ultimately concluded they probably shouldn't.
Right.
A 5% drawback, though, I think is probably
appropriate.
Fair.
Yeah, it's not.
A lot of people are claiming that if it's going to be online, it needs to be a more extreme cut, like 50% and stuff like that.
And then how are they going to pay their professors? Right.
Right.
You still need to pay your.
There are sunk costs here that need to be recouped, and you are getting a law degree at the end.
Which is worth the exact same. No one's going to look at your Georgetown degree at the end and say, "Oh, but you went in 2020."
Right. Exactly.
If anything, they're going to say, "Wow, you went in 2020. Good job."
Exactly. So that's why we've more or less taken the stance that if there's any cuts, they would be very, very modest. You also theoretically wouldn't be paying for room and board, so that you're already getting a bit of a deal.
Got to live somewhere, but yes.
Well, true. But you don't have to pay
some
them.
cost and all. Yes.
So with all that said, so that's catching us up on law schools today. I was gonna, before we got sidetracked in that, I was going to say that a new development when it comes to costs is that, did you know that Pacer still costs 10 cents a page? That's
hilarious, right? That is, somebody made a rule in 1991 when the internet was crazy and a lawless place and everything seemed very, very challenging. And that's 10 cents. I don't know. That's about how much it would cost to do a photocopy in the office, right?
In fact, it was, I believe, 6 when it started. It has gone up over time.
Sure. Okay, but again, it seems like something that is. Not really.
Well, the Federal Circuit agrees with you. In a new decision, the Federal Circuit determined that they affirmed the lower court that said that Pacer is charging people too much, and it's a ripoff. It is taking this money and spending it on programs that are not related to its mandate. Basically, the mandate is that this money is supposed to be used to ensure public access to the courts, and the folks behind Pacer were taking this money and creating a bunch of other programs that theoretically would need separate authorizations. They were just using it out of this like a giant slush fund based on your interest in a complaint in some random district. So that was exciting. We don't know how this will play out necessarily. I mean, they are filing cert petitions and stuff over this, but the one's hope would be that we would see some sort of a reduction in the cost of Pacer, so you wouldn't find yourself constantly paying $3 bills every time you need some loquacious judge's opinion.
That's fair. That's a fair point.
We've got bar exams. We've got law schools. We're talking about Pacer. What else is happening?
Well, another kind of big story for us this week was the Kanye West presidential campaign. Which it's hard to say without laughing. But it was revealed that a number of GOP operatives who either have worked for President Trump's reelection campaign or otherwise very involved in mainstream GOP causes are the ones who have been going around and trying to get Kanye on the ballot in various jurisdictions. And that would have been an interesting politics story and one we would not have covered, but one of the folks involved, Lane Ruland, is actually a big law attorney who, I think it was 10 days before filing paperwork in the state of Wisconsin to get Kanye on the ballot there, also filed some court filings on behalf of President Trump's reelection campaign. So, as I said at the time, it's like, you're a smart person. You can put these all together. You can follow the breadcrumbs here, and it's pretty clear that the higher ups in the Trump campaign and the GOP in general have decided that the best way for them to win is to make sure that there are more candidates that will hopefully, in their minds, siphon voters away from Joe Biden.
It's interesting and indicative of exactly where the party is on its outreach to black voters, that its logic is Kanye's black, I assume they'll vote for him, which is not how these things work.
Yeah.
But
sure, especially not. I mean, there's a lot going on with Kanye, right? It's not just his political aspirations, which, may or may not be a good thing, but there's obviously a lot going on there as well. And
so is your point that there's some sort of conflict ethically in some of the stuff that these lawyers are doing? I mean, technically, I suppose it's not representing an adverse party just because they're petitioning to be adverse on a ballot.
Well, but
I suppose.
I mean, that's the sort of conflict that potentially could be waived, though, right? So if the campaign, if the reelection campaign was like, we do not consider that to be a conflict of interests, that is something
fair.
that could be waived, right? So I don't think that there's an ethical problem necessarily. I do think that it's something everyone should be aware of, and I think that they think it absolutely is a political trick that folks are trying to put, that these big law lawyers are trying to pull off, and I think people need to be aware of that. I think that's true.
I mean, that's a good point, that conflict could be waived. It could be a situation where malpractice sort of situation if Kanye is not aware of the conflict that exists, I suppose.
Potentially.
We're spitballing. This is a section of the show that we're calling Issue Spotter, where we are just trying to figure out any kind of problems. But no, I think that's a fun thought experiment to go through, because it's not like a adversarial court proceeding, but it is definitely a situation where the advice being received by one party is problematic.
Well, but I mean, I guess we don't know exactly the nature of the advice that the Kanye West campaign is receiving. We know that they are being assisted in getting with signatures and filing that paperwork with state officials, right? And so I'm not sure that even if, hypothetically speaking, the West campaign was unaware of the joint representation, or the representation for the president's reelection campaign, I'm not sure that it would have materially changed the actions that were taken. So I'm not sure that there's really much of a conflict, even in, construing everything in the worst possible light. I'm not sure there's a conflict even then. But again, something we should absolutely be talking about.
Yeah, interesting. What else has been happening?
I don't know, man. Feels like we just talked about a lot of stuff. These days and weeks are still being really weird. I feel like, are we in August already?
We are.
That seems very strange.
No, we are definitely in August. We are, trying to figure things out as best we can. We really did not come into this with much of a plan today. And
well, you came.
I blame
in
you.
This
It's okay.
Oh, of course you do.
Yeah.
You came in this morning so hot about the NCBE issue that I was like, oh, well, that's easy. We'll just riff on that for a half hour, because you came in real hot.
I mean, yeah, well, I mean, it's frustrating. It feels like an attack on the whole profession when you start saying that we're going to retaliate against people offering criticism by messing with their licenses. I mean, that feels like a core attack on the profession as a whole. So,
Wait,
yeah.
whoa, okay, break that down a little. I'm not, whatever, but it seems to me like, petty defenses of folks' position and authority is very much in line with what a lot of folks think about lawyers.
But no, I mean, it's arguing that you will prevent people from getting licenses for expressing advocacy seems like a core attack on the concept of being a lawyer. You can disagree with them, but you can't be trying to prevent them from doing their, performing their livelihood. It's just really problematic. And I think it's indicative of, maybe as I say, maybe the NCBE does have a point. Maybe if these people who run the NCBE had taken a bar exam, they wouldn't be so unprofessional. But,
well, diploma privilege does not mean you avoid the character and fitness part
understand.
of licensure.
Yeah, no, but that was my deep concern about it. It's bad. People need to stand up to it, and we need to.
It's also just kind of galling in the sense that it flies in the face of a lot of public health information, a lot of their positions on this. Mm-hmm. And, whether or not it's fair to say that, criticizing the NCBE is problematic, put that to one side. When the NCBE is going against a lot of public health information, when there's a lot of good reason to suspect that that bar exams are potential super spreader events. We know for a fact that several people who've already taken the July exam had the coronavirus, were diagnosed shortly after taking the exam.
Well, we know one, yes.
Yeah. And so given that set of information, it seems even more problematic.
Yeah, it's not good. I think it's incumbent upon attorneys to keep the pressure up on this. And I think it's incumbent now on state bar examiners and the state bar associations and city bars. I think everybody in a position of authority at this point needs to start.
State legislatures are taking this up.
We have gotten state legislatures in New York to pick this up, but it's important.
State Supreme Courts.
Yeah, and we've had a mixed bag of the response to it, and it's bad. And I just hope if there's any good thing to come out of this threat, it's that it hopefully unmasks for those people who are still kind of sitting on the fence and thinking, well, is this really important? I mean, we now have the entity that has a financial interest in keeping this going, coming right out and saying that they're willing to take, intimating that they are willing to take action against their critics, which that should be off-putting enough to make you, even if you're a supporter of the bar exam, reconsider whether or not this makes any sense.
But also seems peak 2020.
Well, yeah.
I mean, not to be a downer here, but, to be a bit of a downer here.
Yeah, so that works for us.
I got nothing.
So anyway, thanks for joining us. Thanks. Next week, hopefully there'll be many more exciting things coming up so that we can
predict what the stories of the next week are going to be. They will.
Oh, we should play that game.
Let's play that game. Listen,
how bad can it get?
How bad can it get? Right? I mean, murder hornets is already off the table. Hurricanes already off the table. Mass blackouts have already happened this week.
Well, we had, that's actually one fair point. One of the reasons why we're a little bit behind on story content here is that we had hurricanes knock out our ability to keep up with the world. So we're just now catching up.
It's not just us. I was looking at something online and folks were talking about how it kind of has felt like a vacation the last couple of days because no one has power or internet, at least in the Northeast. There's large chunks of folks who are without sort of the basics that make working remotely possible.
Yeah. Anyway, so thank you, everybody, for joining us today. You should be subscribed to the show to get new episodes. You should be giving it reviews, stars, write something. It's super important to have those words there so that it picks up in the algorithm. You should be reading Above the Law. As always, follow us on social media. I'm at Joseph Patrice. She's at Catherine1, which is the numeral 1. Special thanks to Paper Software for their sponsorship today. Contract Tools is the tool that you want to be looking into. You should be listening to The Jabot, Catherine's other show. You should listen to our special COVID cast reports. You should listen to the other offerings of the Legal Talk Network. And with all of that said, we will talk to you later.
Bye.
If you'd like more information about what you've heard today, please visit LegalTalkNetwork.com. You can also find us at AboveTheLaw.com, ATLRedline.com, iTunes, RSS, Twitter, and Facebook. The views expressed by the participants of this program are their own and do not represent the views of, nor are they endorsed by, Legal Talk Network, its officers, directors, employees, agents, representatives, shareholders, and subsidiaries. None of the content should be considered legal advice. As always, consult a lawyer.